Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're diving deep into a case that gripped Long Island, New York, for over a decade, the Gilgo Beach Serial Killings. For years this mystery remained unsolved, a dark cloud hanging over the community. But recent developments, particularly the prosecution of Rex Heuermann, have brought a renewed focus to this tragic story. Gilgo Beach itself is a seemingly tranquil stretch of coastline along Long Island's southern shore. It's a place where people go to relax, enjoy the ocean breeze, and escape the hustle and bustle. But between 1993 and 2011, this remote area became the dumping ground for the remains of 11 individuals, primarily women working as sex workers, often described as petite in stature. The initial discovery that sent shockwaves through the region occurred in December 2010. While authorities were searching for a missing woman named Shannon Gilbert, a police officer and his canine partner stumbled upon human remains near Ocean Parkway. This unexpected finding would soon unravel a much larger and more disturbing narrative. The man now at the center of this narrative is Rex Heuermann, a Manhattan architect residing in Massapequa Park, Long Island. His arrest in July 2023 marked a significant turning point in a case that had long frustrated investigators and haunted the families of the victims. The chain of events that ultimately led to the exposure of the Gilgo Beach killings began with the disappearance of 24-year-old Shannon Gilbert in early May 2010. Gilbert, who worked as a sex worker and advertised her services online, was last seen in Oak Beach, a gated community near Gilgo Beach. In a frantic 911 call made on the night of her disappearance, Gilbert could be heard saying someone was after her. This call and her subsequent disappearance prompted an intensive search by Suffolk County Police. While the search for Gilbert continued for months, it was the accidental discovery of other remains that unveiled the true horror of what had been happening along Ocean Parkway. Although police later suggested Gilbert's death was accidental, her case was the catalyst that brought the other victims to light. The grim reality of the situation became apparent in December 2010. On December 11th, during a training exercise, a police officer and his cadaver dog discovered the remains of Melissa Barthelemy near Gilgo Beach. Just 2 days later, on December 13th, the bodies of 3 more women, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Megan Waterman, and Amber Lynn Costello, were found within a quarter-mile stretch of the same area. These 4 women, who became known as the Gilgo Four, shared striking similarities. They were all petite, in their 20s, and worked as online escorts. Some of them were found wrapped in burlap, a detail that suggested a disturbing pattern. The close proximity of these discoveries and the similarities among the victims quickly led investigators to suspect the presence of a serial killer. The search for more answers continued into 2011, revealing an even wider scope of tragedy. In March 2011, further partial remains of Jessica Taylor were discovered along Ocean Parkway. Then, in April 2011, the remains of Valerie Mack, along with those of an unidentified female toddler, later linked to another unidentified victim known as Peaches, and an unidentified Asian male, were found in a brush area along the same stretch of road. Later that month, additional partial remains of Peaches were found at Jones Beach State Park in Nassau County, and further partial remains of Karen Vergata were discovered at Tobay Beach, also in Nassau County. The discovery of these additional remains, some partial and scattered across different locations, indicated that the killings might have been occurring over a longer period and that the perpetrator might have used multiple disposal sites. The presence of unidentified victims, including a toddler, added another layer of sorrow and complexity to the case. The initial search for Shannon Gilbert inadvertently unveiled a series of murders, revealing a tragedy that extended far beyond one missing person. The discovery of these remains along Ocean Parkway and in nearby areas painted a horrifying picture of a serial killer operating in the shadows of Long Island. Among the 11 individuals whose remains were discovered, 7 have been identified. Each of these women had their own story, their own life cut short. Maureen Brainerd Barnes, 25, was the first of the Gilgo 4 to disappear, last seen on July 9, 2007, in New York City. She had traveled from her home in Norwich, Connecticut, to work as an escort, advertising her services online through Craigslist. A single mother of two, she was last heard from when she called a friend in Connecticut late at night, saying she was planning to take a midnight train. Maureen was described as petite, standing at just 4 feet 11 inches tall and weighing around 105 pounds. Leading up to her disappearance, she had been in contact with a burner phone, a prepaid phone often used anonymously. Her remains were found on December 13, 2010, near Gilgo Beach. Notably, she was found restrained with 3 leather belts, and DNA found on one of these belts later matched the wife of Rex Heuermann. The fact that Maureen disappeared 3 years before the other Gilgo 4 suggests that the perpetrator had been active for a longer period. Melissa Barthelemy, 24, went missing on July 12, 2009. She had moved from Buffalo, New York to New York City to work as a hairdresser, and at some point also began working as an escort through Craigslist using the alias Chloe. Melissa was also petite, standing at 4 feet 10 inches and weighing about 95 pounds. On the night she was last seen, she met with a client and deposited $900 in her bank account. Disturbingly, in the weeks following her disappearance, her 15-year-old sister Amanda received a series of vulgar and taunting phone calls from a man using Melissa's cell phone. The caller eventually told Amanda that he had killed Melissa and would watch her rot. Police traced some of these calls to various locations, including Madison Square Garden, Midtown Manhattan, and Massapequa, the town where Rex Heuermann resided. Melissa's burner phone had also pinged in Massapequa Park around the time of her disappearance. Her remains were the first to be found in the search that ultimately uncovered the other victims, discovered on December 11, 2010, near Gilgo Beach. The torment inflicted on Melissa's family through the phone calls reveals a disturbing aspect of the killer's behavior. Megan Waterman, 22, disappeared on June 6, 2010. She had traveled to Long Island from Maine for sex work, advertising on Craigslist and Backpage under the names Lexi and Sexy Lexi. Megan was a mother of one. She was last seen leaving a Holiday Inn Express in Hauppauge, Long Island, around 1:30 a.m. to meet a client. Surveillance video released later showed her in the hotel lobby in her final hours. When she didn't return or check in on her 3-year-old daughter, her family reported her missing. Megan's body was found on December 13, 2010, near Gilgo Beach. A crucial piece of evidence linking Rex Heuermann to Megan was DNA evidence. A hair found with her body matched DNA recovered from a pizza crust discarded by Heuermann. This direct forensic link played a significant role in his eventual arrest. Amber Lynn Costello, 27, was last seen on September 2, 2010, leaving her home in West Babylon, Long Island, to meet a client. She was known to work as an escort on Craigslist and Backpage to support her and her roommate's heroin addiction. Amber was also petite, standing at 4 feet 11 inches, and used the aliases Carolina or Mia. A male friend later told investigators that he noticed a dark green Chevrolet Avalanche, a vehicle later linked to Rex Heuermann, presumably driven by the client she was meeting. Amber's body was found on December 13, 2010, near Gilgo Beach. The eyewitness account of the Chevrolet Avalanche near the location where Amber was last seen provided an early and important lead for investigators. Jessica Taylor, 20, disappeared in July 2003 while working as an escort in New York City, around the Port Authority bus terminal. Her torso was discovered on July 26, 2003, in Manorville, New York, approximately 45 miles east of Gilgo Beach. These remains were identified later that year through DNA analysis. However, further remains, including her skull, hands, and forearm, were found along Ocean Parkway on March 29, 2011, and were matched to Taylor. The discovery of Jessica's remains in 2 different locations years apart indicated that the killer had been active much earlier than initially thought and was using areas beyond Gilgo Beach to dispose of bodies. Additionally, a tattoo on her torso had been severely obliterated, suggesting an attempt to prevent identification. Sandra Costilla, 28, was last seen on November 19, 1993, in New York City. Her remains were found the following day, November 20, 1993, in a wooded area of North Sea, Long Island, about 60 miles northeast of Gilgo Beach. 2 hunters discovered her body, which was found lying on her back with her arms outstretched. In December 2024, Rex Heuermann was charged with Sandra's murder, 31 years after her death. DNA from hairs found on her body matched Heuermann's, according to the indictment. Sandra's case significantly extended the timeline of the suspected killings back to 1993, revealing that the perpetrator may have been operating for nearly 2 decades before the bodies were discovered near Gilgo Beach. Valerie Mack, also known as Melissa Taylor, was last seen by her family in the spring or summer of 2000 in Port Republic, New Jersey. At the time of her disappearance, she was living in Philadelphia and working as an escort. Her partial skeletal remains were discovered in Manorville, New York, on November 19, 2000, but were not identified until 2020. Additional remains, including her head, right foot and hands, were found along Ocean Parkway on April 4, 2011, and were later identified as belonging to Mack. Rex Heuermann was indicted for Valerie's murder in December 2024. Notably, a planning document allegedly belonging to Heuermann, recovered from his computer, referenced the dumping site where parts of Mack's body were first found. Furthermore, prosecutors alleged that Heuermann mutilated Mack's right leg, which had a tattoo with her son's name, to thwart efforts to identify her. DNA evidence also linked hairs found with Mack's remains to Heuermann's wife and daughter. These are the 7 women Rex Heuermann is currently charged with murdering. Their stories paint a tragic picture of lives cut short, highlighting the devastating impact of these crimes on their families and communities. After years of investigation and no arrests, the Gilgo Beach case took a dramatic turn in July 2023 with the arrest of Rex Heuermann. He was initially charged with the murders of Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Lynn Costello. This arrest came as a result of persistent investigative work and advancements in forensic technology that finally linked Heuermann to these crimes. The investigation didn't stop there. In January 2024, 6 months after his initial arrest, Heuermann was also charged with the murder of Maureen Brainerd Barnes. Then, in June 2024, he faced additional charges for the murders of Jessica Taylor and Sandra Costilla, extending the timeline of the suspected killings back to 1993. Most recently, in December 2024, Heuermann was indicted for the 2000 murder of Valerie Mack, bringing the total number of women he is charged with murdering to 7. It's important to note that Rex Heuermann has pleaded not guilty to all of these charges. His defense team has indicated they will challenge the evidence against him, setting the stage for what is likely to be a complex and closely watched legal process. The case against Rex Heuermann rests on a variety of evidence, meticulously gathered by law enforcement over years of investigation. One of the key pieces of evidence is DNA. In the case of Megan Waterman, DNA from a hair found on her body was matched to DNA recovered from a pizza crust discarded by Heuermann in a Manhattan trash can. This was a significant breakthrough, directly linking Heuermann to one of the victims. Additionally, familial DNA potentially links him to Maureen Brainerd Barnes. A hair found with her remains showed a genetic similarity to a DNA sample taken from Heuermann's wife. Similarly, hairs found near Valerie Mack's remains were linked to his estranged wife and daughter. While these are not direct matches to Heuermann himself, prosecutors argue they place his family members in contact with the victims around the time of their disappearances, especially noting that Heuermann's wife was reportedly out of town during some of the murders. It's worth mentioning that Heuermann's defense team is challenging the admissibility of the nuclear DNA testing used in these analyses, arguing it's not widely accepted in the scientific community. This legal battle over the DNA evidence will likely be a central point in the upcoming trial. Another crucial piece of evidence is the identification of a dark green Chevrolet Avalanche. A witness reported seeing a vehicle matching this description near the location where Amber Lynn Costello was last seen before her disappearance. Investigators later discovered that Rex Heuermann owned a Chevrolet Avalanche, making this eyewitness account a significant lead. Furthermore, records of burner phones used to contact some of the victims were traced to cell towers in the vicinity of Heuermann's residence in Massapequa Park, Long Island. The use of burner phones suggests an attempt to conceal communication and identity, and the connection to Heuermann's location further strengthens the case against him. Perhaps one of the most disturbing pieces of evidence is a document allegedly outlining Heuermann's methods for committing the murders. This planning document, found on a hard drive in his basement, reportedly contained checklists with tasks to complete before, during, and after the killings, as well as lessons for next time. The document allegedly included notes on body prep, such as remove head and hands, and reminders to clean bodies and destroy evidence. It also referenced the dumping site where Valerie Mack's remains were found. If deemed authentic and admissible in court, this document could provide a chilling insight into Heuermann's alleged planning and execution of these crimes. Finally, investigators uncovered disturbing online searches on electronic devices seized from Heuermann's home. These searches reportedly included violent pornography, bondage and torture pornography, and even searches related to the Gilgo Beach investigation itself, such as why hasn't the Long Island serial killer been caught? These online activities could suggest a potential motive, or at least a disturbing pattern of interest that aligns with the nature of the crimes. The investigation has revealed some consistent patterns in the way the victims were killed. For the identified victims in the Gilgo Beach case, the primary method of killing was strangulation. This consistent cause of death across multiple victims suggests a specific modus operandi of the perpetrator. Furthermore, in some instances, particularly with the Gilgo Four, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Lynn Costello, the bodies were found wrapped in burlap. This detail could indicate a specific method of transporting or concealing the bodies, potentially linking these four killings to the same perpetrator. DNA was also found on burlap associated with at least one of the victims. Beyond strangulation and burlap wrapping, there were other disturbing details about the condition of some of the bodies. Maureen Brainerd Barnes was found restrained with leather belts. In the cases of Jessica Taylor and Valerie Mack, their remains were found in multiple locations, and in Valerie Mack's case, a tattoo was allegedly mutilated, suggesting attempts to prevent identification. These details can provide further insight into the killer's behavior and potential motivations. Initially, the investigation into the Gilgo Beach killings largely focused on the period around the discovery of the Gilgo Four in December 2010. The simultaneous discovery of these four bodies naturally led investigators to concentrate their efforts on the events and time period surrounding those deaths. However, as the investigation progressed and more victims were identified, the timeline began to expand. The cases of Jessica Taylor, who disappeared in 2003, and Valerie Mack, who went missing in 2000, indicated that the perpetrator had been active for several years prior to the 2010 discoveries. The fact that partial remains of these victims were found years apart and in different locations highlighted the challenges investigators faced in initially connecting these cases to the later Gilgo Beach findings. The timeline of the suspected killings expanded even further with the charges related to Sandra Costilla, who disappeared in 1993. Costilla's disappearance and death in 1993 pushed the known timeline of the alleged killings back nearly 2 decades from the initial focus. Her body was also found approximately 60 miles away from Gilgo Beach, suggesting that the perpetrator's methods or disposal locations might have varied over time. This significant extension of the timeline revealed the potential for a much longer period of undetected criminal activity than initially understood. Even with the arrest and charges against Rex Heuermann, the investigation into the Gilgo Beach serial killings remains ongoing. This indicates that authorities believe there may be more to uncover, including the potential identification of the remaining unidentified victims and possible connections to other unsolved cases. The unidentified remains found during the investigation, Peaches, Baby Doe, and the unidentified Asian male, represent potential additional victims whose identities are yet to be determined. Law enforcement is likely continuing to explore any potential leads and utilize advancements in forensic technology to identify these individuals and determine if their cases are connected to Heuermann or other potential suspects. Authorities are also reportedly continuing to investigate other areas associated with Heuermann, suggesting the investigation is not limited to the immediate vicinity of Gilgo Beach. Finally, the case of Shannon Gilbert remains a point of contention. While police have officially ruled her death as accidental, her family disputes this finding and believes she was murdered. The circumstances surrounding her disappearance and the frantic 911 call she made continue to fuel speculation and highlight the unresolved aspects of the broader Gilgo Beach case. The Gilgo Beach serial killings stand as a stark reminder of the complexities and challenges of investigating long unsolved crimes. For over a decade, the case remained unsolved, underscoring the dedication and persistence required by law enforcement to pursue justice even after many years. The eventual breakthrough with the arrest of Rex Heuermann is a testament to the tireless efforts of numerous investigators who continue to re-examine evidence and pursue new leads over the years, including the formation of new task forces dedicated to the case. The case also highlights the crucial role of advancements in forensic technology in solving cold cases. The use of DNA analysis, including familial DNA and potentially genetic genealogy, played a significant part in identifying Rex Heuermann as a suspect. The ongoing debate surrounding the admissibility of nuclear DNA testing further underscores the evolving nature of forensic science in the courtroom. The extension of the timeline in the Gilgo Beach case, with charges now dating back to 1993, illustrates the frightening reality of how long some serial offenders can operate without detection. This serves as a somber reminder of the potential for long-term, undetected criminal activity and the importance of continued vigilance and investigation into unsolved cases. Finally, the fact that many of the identified victims were sex workers highlights the vulnerabilities faced by individuals in this profession. This tragic case brings to the forefront the dangers faced by those in the sex work industry and raises important societal questions about their safety and the factors that contribute to such crimes. The Gilgo Beach serial killings represent a decade of darkness on Long Island. What began with the search for a missing woman ultimately revealed a series of horrific crimes that claimed the lives of at least 11 individuals. The arrest and ongoing prosecution of Rex Heuermann mark a significant development in this long and tragic case, offering a glimmer of hope for justice for the victims and their families. The investigation continues, with unanswered questions remaining about potential additional victims and the full scope of these crimes. The Gilgo Beach case underscores the importance of persistent investigative efforts, the crucial role of advancements in forensic technology, and the need to remember the victims and the vulnerabilities that may have made them targets. As the legal proceedings against Rex Heuermann move forward, the hope is that the truth will fully emerge, and that some measure of closure can be brought to this long and painful chapter in Long Island's history.